Hello. I'm so excited for this today. Welcome to Secrets to Successful STEM Challenges. We are going to be learning a lot today, so I am going to jump right in. So are you in the right place today? Does any of this sound familiar? Let me know in the comments if you feel like you're a 1, a 2, or a 3 here. So which one is most closely describing where you're at with STEM challenges right now? Are you brand new? Are you somebody who's tried them and either you have questions or maybe you tried them and didn't really go very well, or maybe you tried them and you're just not quite sure you're getting everything that you could be getting out of that time. And we want to make sure we're using all those instructional minutes as well as we can, right? Or a 3, if you consider yourself a STEM challenge enthusiast, you're just fully in, ready to dive in, you love them, and you just want to get some more best practices and get some more tips and tricks. This is going to help me figure out just kind of like who we've got in our audience today, and then I can sort of gear where we're going, guide where we're going. So you might be wondering who I am, and I am actually going to dive back on for a second so you can actually see me. There we go. Hi. Hi, everybody. So my name is Carrie Tracy. You might know me from feelgoodteaching.com or stemchallenge.com. I am a full-on STEM challenge enthusiast. I want to tell you a little bit about my teaching experience, my teaching journey, to give you kind of a little bit of background so you know where I'm coming from. So I was a classroom teacher for 10 years. I mostly taught 5th and 6th grade, but I have taught 2nd through 7th and 8th if you actually include elective classes, which I do. I think that's important too. And my favorite classes to teach were always science and ELA, but writing specifically. So when I came into teaching, probably like so many of you, maybe you can relate, I had like all this like puppy energy for teaching. I was so excited and just full of idealism and ideas and raring to go. And then a couple of years in, things start to get a little bit tough. For me, there was some pressure, a lot of pressure to teach science like it was a nonfiction reading comprehension class. And I just felt from the very depths of my core how wrong that felt to me. And it made it really hard for me to keep that puppy enthusiasm for teaching. And not only did I feel like it was hard for me, I was worried about what it was doing to my students. That focusing in on really just such a small set of skills and talents that are, accessible on the test, I worried how that was impacting my students' love for learning and also their self-esteem, because some of those talents don't particularly test well on a bubble and standardized test. And I was worried that a lot of my kids were sort of getting lost in the shuffle, and it made me feel awful. And then I discovered a master's program in design-based learning. And for me, it just changed everything about my approach to teaching, about the joy that I found in it again, and in what I was able to accomplish with and for my students. So what you see there, that big long table, looks like a big pile of junk, but what it really represents is some of the strongest teaching moments and most impactful teaching I was ever able to do. And it encompasses a lot of different kinds of students and a lot of kinds of talents that they have. So it just completely re-energized everything that I do, and it led me to doing what I do today. So for the last several years, I have been creating these resources around STEM challenges and professional development because I want to be able to share what I call feel-good teaching moments with more teachers and more students around the world. So I consider myself very fortunate to have the opportunity to do just that. And so that is why I'm here today, sharing what I know about STEM challenges. Now I'm going to pop myself back off this screen so I'm not blocking the rest of what we're doing. If it'll let me. There we go. You gotta love the technology, right, everybody? So we're gonna dive right in. Our main topics today, we're gonna cover the basics: what, why, who, where, and when. We're gonna sort of fly through that because we do need to sort of set the foundation to make sure we're all kind of in the same place. I saw some ones coming through that screen, so I know that we want to make sure that we're at least coming from the same, from the same area. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time on the how, because I know that's why most of us are here today, right? So we want to know how to do this most effectively. What are the best practices? And we also want to know how to handle some of these troubleshooting issues like epic fails, common mistakes to avoid. Then at the end, I'm going to give you some access to some resources. If there's a raffle coming up tomorrow, I want to tell you about, and then we will do some Q&A. I already do have some pre-submitted questions, and I know I'll be getting a lot from you today as well. So let's get into it. What is a STEM challenge? Well, there's a lot of disagreement on this, weirdly. So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. You've probably already, you've probably also seen this referred to as a STEAM challenge, and that's when you incorporate art. Some people will tell you that you need to have all four represented, and I think that's a great goal. I think you should definitely work toward getting science, technology, engineering, and math all integrated into a STEM challenge. That can be very challenging to do, and it can also feel very limiting if you feel like you have to have all four. I think as long as you have two, and all of these other factors are in place, that the students are really the ones creating and building their designs to solve problems, they're collaborating, it's open-ended, and it requires an application of some combination of those skills. You can also pull in other subject areas. I frequently pull in English language arts. I also look for PE and music and social studies where and when I can. Why should you make time for STEM challenges? Well, a big one is a lot of the college professors and hiring managers are complaining a whole lot about the types of students that we're sending them these days, that they aren't prepared for the realities of adult life. They crumble very easily under pressure. And this is something I would love to read to you, and I know this is a no-no, but I just have to read it to you, okay? So, but I also worry about the people, oh, you know what? I'm seeing I can't, my screen is a little bit blocked, so I'm gonna actually open this up in the book itself so I can see it better. But I also worry about the people who cruise through life friction-free for a long, long time before encountering their first real failure. They have so little practice falling and getting up again. They have so many reasons to stick with a fixed mindset. I see a lot of invisibly vulnerable high achievers stumble in young adulthood and struggle to get up again. I call them the fragile perfects. Sometimes I meet fragile perfects in my office after a midterm or final. Very quickly, it becomes clear that these bright and wonderful people know how to succeed, but not how to fail. So full disclosure, I am a recovering fragile perfect. And that's part of why I am such a STEM challenge enthusiast, because I see the potential that it has to set people up for success in their future. So the reality is we can't even imagine what the jobs of tomorrow are going to be. If you're teaching, especially if you're teaching like younger students, like second and third graders, it's impossible for us to know really what kinds of jobs are going to exist for them with all the AI and different technology coming in. So I think it's crucial that we set them up with the skills and tools and mindset to be adaptable and to be able to fulfill really what we don't even know exists yet, right? So let's talk about the benefits of STEM challenges. They encourage teamwork, collaboration, creativity. It helps develop traits of growth mindset like persistence, resilience, and comfort with productive failure, which is crucial, right? Gives you an opportunity to apply science, technology, engineering, and math skills in real-world problems. These completed designs in your classroom provide a physical context, and you can use that to increase the engagement with your students in the standards-based lessons you have following up a challenge. It really levels the playing field for our high and low students, and it brings joy back into the classroom, or as I like to call it, feel-good teaching. This is just a piece of artwork from a Norwegian artist, Lisa Isado. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but this to me sort of solidifies the point that we have to be really thoughtful about giving all types of students these opportunities to show their special and sometimes weird talents and skills, right? We don't want to keep putting them through this cookie cutter. And that's where you saw, as when I introduced myself, how I was starting to feel as a teacher. And it was hurting me to know that I might be hurting my students and leaving students, like you see this little girl in the tutu in the picture, leaving her out of the types of activities we were doing in class. Who should be doing STEM challenges? Well, to me, anyone who benefits from anything on that list, which really is everybody. Everybody should be doing STEM challenges, because even though it's not, I often, when I talk about it, I talk about it in this magical way. And I know it's not magic, but to me, it's the closest activity in my teaching, in my career, that has ever been so close to magic, because you can do so much with them, as we'll get to when we get into the how in just a little bit. Where do STEM challenges fit in my class? If you're self-contained, what I usually do is build during the science block and then extend during math, ELA, and social studies. If you're a single subject, you might be an elective teacher or a core subject teacher, so you're obviously going to teach in that single subject class. And if it's possible to work with your colleagues, whether that be if you're an elective teacher and you have an opportunity to work with a regular classroom teacher, it's very helpful to be able to extend out our STEM challenges if you can collaborate. That doesn't always work, but if it does, it can be really beneficial to you and to your students to, to really get the most out of STEM challenges. I'm going to need to take a sip of water here. Okay, so much better. So when do STEM challenges fit in my class? There are two ways to look at this. The first one is frequency. For me, the ideal situation is to be doing STEM challenges weekly, but I didn't start that way, and I don't recommend if you're brand new that you start that way either, because it can feel super overwhelming. I would start monthly if weekly feels daunting. Maybe even just start with holidays. So back to school, you start with one your first week, and maybe you don't hit another one until maybe even like October, sometime around Halloween. Maybe you do something in late September for fall. Maybe you do something before winter break, that kind of thing. It makes a really nice substitute for, parties and stuff like that, because kids do enjoy it, but you're still actually, and they'll stay engaged in it, but they're actually still getting a lot of great content and academics from that. I always like to do mine on Fridays or assessment days if your assessments don't tend to fall on Fridays. And the reason is I noticed when I started doing STEM challenges consistently with my students that, and on a certain day, their absentee rates dropped dramatically because they didn't want to miss a build day. So that's just a little quick tip from me on that. If you have an assessment day or a day students are frequently absent, start planning some STEM challenges on those days. Do it consistently. I used to have this little girl even ask me, oh, Miss Tracy, are we going to be doing a challenge tomorrow? And so I'd always say yes, and then I might even if I wasn't planning one, I might put one in because she was absent so much. I wanted to make sure she'd come. And then timing. Okay, so the very first ones that you start out with, you should give yourself a lot of extra time. 60 to 90 minutes is great. I know that's not realistic for a lot of us. That's one of the reasons I suggest starting with a holiday or like back to school, because you can build in your practicing procedures. How do you get materials? How do you put materials back? How do you work with your team? You have a little bit more flexibility with time on those types of days. And so that's a good place to start. You can also break up your challenges over multiple days. We'll go over that in a little bit. And then if you start doing them consistently enough and you're doing them, weekly or something like that, eventually your students get into sort of a rhythm with it, and they know what to expect, they know what to do, and you can really decrease that amount of time down to like 45 to 60 minutes, but they do need practice, and so do you, in getting through all of the steps of the STEM challenge cycle, which is where I'm at now. I'm going to pop back on the screen here as I'm talking about this, because I find it's a little bit easier for me when I attend these trainings if there's a little, like if somebody comes on, hi, and starts talking to me, it makes it easier for me to pay attention again. So I'm going to pop back on from time to time to do that. So this is basically the breakdown for me of a STEM challenge cycle. This is what I do. I give the students about 5 minutes to plan. The build time, you'll see 15 to 40 minutes. It has a lot of variability because this is going to depend a lot on how old are your students and how complex is the challenge. So it can really vary quite a bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So the next thing right after the build that I like to do with my students is we actually do a quick gallery walk where everybody's quiet and we walk around the room just so everybody can see each of the designs up close. And then we usually go from team to team, and they have about a minute to present and then another 2 to 3 minutes to take questions from me and from the other students. Right after that, we usually go into the record and reflect, which is individual. Most of the things you do with STEM challenges are collaborative, but it's really important to have some of the steps, and this one in particular, be an individual activity, because it gives you the insight into what the students individually, I keep saying that word because it's so important with this step, how are they developing their scientific reasoning and analysis? What are their ideas? Especially in a group setting, some of the more timid students don't always get their ideas implemented by the group because sometimes they don't even share their ideas with the group. So this gives you some insight into what they're thinking about You'll also have an opportunity to see if there were maybe some collaboration problems, but more importantly, what did they get out of the challenge? What do they understand from it? And most STEM challenges on the market will come with some form of record and reflect sheet that will help you moving forward with this. And we'll talk some other options a little bit later on. The next step is the class discussion. Now, I have this written down as 10 minutes. I rarely actually keep myself to a 10-minute discussion. It depends on the quality of the discussion we're having with the whole class. So this is my opportunity to, after they've done the sharing, after they've done the record and reflect, although sometimes I do flip record and reflect with discuss. It depends on how, like, what's going on with time management during the challenge. Sometimes I'll actually assign record and reflect as a homework activity, or I'll put it in like later in the day on the must do, may do chart, but it's always a must do. You have to do this. So sometimes we'll go straight from sharing out into the class discussion. Again, it depends on what you've got in terms of time to run your STEM challenges. But with the class discussion, I'm looking to understand not only what did they glean from patterns they've seen, because now we've gone around and seen all of the designs, we've heard from all of the groups. What did they pick up? What patterns did they notice? What does it seem works well to them? What doesn't work as well? And it also is an opportunity to talk about, some of the softer skills. We talk about sometimes process. What did your group divide up the labor? How did they do that? Did anybody work particularly well with their group? What do you think it was about that made the group work really well together? Who had troubles with their group? What was it about the group dynamic that made it not work? It gives you an opportunity to talk about all the different types of skills, scientific and the softer skills as well, which is nice. Follow-ups on following days. We will do extensions that are in multiple subject areas. We'll connect some different standards-based lessons to the challenge, because that's part of the reason to do the STEM challenge in the first place, is to engage them in the follow-up activities you want to do. And then multiple iterations. The next iteration would happen maybe the next week, and it depends on the setup that you have in your class, but it is important to make time and space for multiple iterations, and we'll talk more about that coming up as well. But all of those things you can put into your lesson plan broken up over multiple days. So if you don't see your kids, if you don't have an hour block to devote to this, you're going to want to break it up over 2 days. If you have an elective class, you might want to break that up over multiple weeks. I think that comes up because that was a pre-submitted question. So I'm going to cover this a little bit more at the end when we get to Q&A, and keep moving. So I make sure I keep myself honest and we have lots of time to cover our how, which is where we're at now, which is great. I'm going to dive off the screen. Okay. So how should I facilitate my STEM challenges? Well, this is the good stuff, right? This is the stuff you came here to see and hear. We're going to talk very quickly about NGSS, Next Gen Science Standards, and the engineering design process. We're going to go through 4 essential elements of quality STEM challenges. It's so important because STEM challenges can be amazing, and they can also fall really short. And then we'll talk about 4 common mistakes to avoid. So I want to start with this standard that I think causes a lot of strife for people, and doesn't need to. But even for me, when I first read it, I sort of had an issue with it. And if you've seen any of my training before, I have talked about this. I talk about it every time. So research on a problem should be carried out before beginning to design a solution. Okay. There are a couple of things to unpack here about this. So the first thing is that it says research on a problem, not research on a solution. But it's very hard to research a problem without coming across some potential solutions. For example, if you were doing a boat challenge and your goal was to, just a capacity, how many pennies can you put in the boat before it sinks? So the problem is that you need something that floats on water and can contain a lot of weight or a lot of items. That's the problem. The solution is a boat, right? And if we're asking our students to go through and carry out some sort of research beforehand, it's very hard for them to make that delineation between those two things. And they're going to end up seeing a lot of solutions, which I have a problem with. I don't believe in researching before doing the first build, and I will tell you why as we go through. The next thing I want to look at is the engineering design process. So we see here, it basically starts the same way, right? Define a problem, background research. Those are the first things. Now, when I came across this for the first time, I had already been doing design challenges for quite a long time, and I sort of panicked, honestly, for a moment, because I was doing challenges far before, like way before NGSS came into play. And my design process is not skipping, but reordering a little bit. So I did a little bit of research, and what I found out is that even engineers don't strictly adhere to starting at define problem, background research. They might come in at any point on this list, and then they cycle through. For example, they might have an idea for something they want to build that they think would be pretty interesting. So they might start with brainstorm and plan and then select a design and build. Then they do follow through the order. They come back around and define the problem more because it's an iterative approach. So I want us to try to shake the idea that you have to be so rigid that you start with the problem, defining the problem and doing background research first. The reason I really encourage you not to do that is because it leads to a number of problems. And I know this is going to be hard for some people because some people are really sticklers, and I am actually, honestly, like, I'm such a rule follower usually, but that's why when I first came across this, I was like, wait, what? I don't want to do it that way. It doesn't work for me. And so here's what I want you to think about, what I want you to consider. First of all, building is research. It's a type of research. It's hands-on research. But the biggest thing for me is that when I let students research before we start building, it leads to a lot of replication. They try to imitate something they've already seen instead of doing something brand new and interesting and creative. It also, for me, takes a lot of the energy and the enthusiasm actually out of the challenge itself because, building is innately interesting, hands-on fun, right? And research is, for most of us, that's an enthusiasm and motivation killer, right? Like, oh, let's do some research on boats before you get to build one. But I want you to even go a little bit further and do sort of a gut check a little bit. Imagine you are teaching a unit on simple machines. And your plan is you're going to go through and do whatever lessons and activities you were going to do. And then at the end of your unit, as a culminating activity, you're going to do a STEM challenge where they need to create or combine some simple machines. Now, I want you to think about your typical class, the students that you have. I can imagine 5, maybe more, who don't pay particularly good attention to all of those lessons and all those activities leading up to the culminating activity. And so ultimately, they might not even do very well because they weren't really paying attention because they weren't engaged and they didn't care. If we flip it, instead, I ask you to build a carrot carriage that will roll down a ramp. We do that first before we've taught you anything, before you've done any research. Now, of course, the students are going to run into problems because maybe the wheels don't turn because they haven't really set it up as an axle where it can freely move. Maybe things fall apart. But now, if I've done this as my engagement activity, and then I lead into lessons and research about simple machines, can you hear and see the difference in your class as you're delivering your standards-based lessons and doing those activities? Because now they have a reason to care. They want to understand why their carrot carriage didn't roll or what they could do to make it roll better. They want to know because they want an opportunity to make their designs better. It actually, weirdly, saves you time to do a challenge as an engagement activity and a follow-up culmination activity because they're more engaged in the lessons and the content you're teaching in the middle. You don't have to reteach as much stuff. So keep that in mind as we go through and talk more about the importance of multiple iterations as we go through. For quality STEM challenges, there are 4 main things that we need to address. Are we really doing a challenge, or is this Craft Tivity? Because there are a lot of Craft Tivities out there. What are we doing with materials and group size? And then the teacher's role is critical. You have some different things you should be doing and should not be doing. And of course, the post-challenge lessons and activities. These 4 things, when they're in place and they're in place well and executed well, you're going to have such a dramatic increase in student engagement across the board, and it's going to lead to quality challenges. My first point here, challenge versus craftivity. You shouldn't be providing, should not be providing step-by-step directions. It's not IKEA furniture. And while it's good to know how to put together IKEA furniture, I'm not saying it's not a good thing, that's not a STEM challenge. You do not want to show them samples, photos, or examples of completed designs. Now, I know a lot of people are probably a little bit like, no, how? I always show them pictures and ideas and samples. So here's what I want, just as an example. I want you to look at this apple. Really take in all the details of this apple. Now what I want you to do is I want you to create a fruit of your own, but I don't want it to be an apple. You can be inspired by this apple, but please don't make an apple. The apple is just an example. Stop thinking about the apple. How hard is it for you to get that apple out of your head and create something that isn't an apple once you've seen it? It's incredibly difficult. And I know that this kicks up some fear for a lot of people. How will they know what to make? How are students going to know what to do if I don't show them? But here's the thing, life is full of ambiguity. And one of my major goals when I'm doing STEM challenges is to help students encounter problems that they don't immediately have an idea how to solve. Because that's what life is about, right? And because as you saw earlier when I said, we don't know what the jobs of tomorrow are going to be, we have no idea. Our kids are going to need to be solving complex problems that we can't even imagine. So I think it's really important to give them these experiences where there aren't answers, samples, and ideas right in front of them, that they have to just sort of create and go from there and iterate and modify. And I do want to just say really quickly that crafts aren't bad. I'm not trash talking crafts at all. I think crafts are great. I love crafts. They're just not STEM challenges. So how do you then turn something that might be a little crafty into something that is truly a challenge? Well, you have to tailor. You have to give students some guide rails. And almost any challenge can be made appropriate for any age group if you are tailoring. So for example, a shelter challenge, that's something a toddler can do. I've seen toddlers make shelters, houses with blocks. An older child might be able to make something a little bit more complex, an actual house where a doll or a pet could live. And we know, of course, adults build shelters all the time. The adult is building something you can actually live in. It's family sized, earthquake compliant, it's got plumbing, it's got electrical, it's got it all. So what's changing from one group to the next? It's basically these three levers. And when we adjust to these three levers in our STEM challenges, that's how we can make sure it's tailored, it's differentiated, it's perfect for our students in the standards and the age group that they're at. We just have to make adjustments with the materials, the criteria for success, and the constraints. And the main thing you want to use for that is your criteria and constraints list. So you want to modify the difficulty and you want to give students some structure. You just want to make sure that you don't give too much structure, because too much direction turns into IKEA furniture, and there's only one way to get it done right. So you want to stay away from things that are not enough structure and things that are way too much structure. You want to keep it open-ended. But saying something like, can you build a tower? It's not enough. It'd be the same thing as if you said, can you write an essay? We know that, students need a little bit more direction. We usually give them a writing prompt that gives them the idea of how long this should be, what should the topic be, who's the audience, what do I care about here? And that's how you're going to use your criteria and constraints list to give some guidelines so students know how to approach the challenge and what they need to do. What are the requirements and what are the limitations? And this is your list where you can involve or incorporate your goals, your content standards, and your storage concerns. So a goal, for example, is if you're building a tower, is the tower meant to be built the tallest one possible? Is it meant to be built around an obstacle? Is it meant to be never before seen? Is the goal for it to hold a lot of weight or a lot of different items for capacity? There can be a lot of different goals, but I think it's important to set an overall goal for your challenge, and then you want to weave in your content standards, things like you can maybe see in the page that's sort of on top in the lower right hand corner. And actually, let's look in the last row. So In the criterion in the last row says towers must withstand an earthquake, and the tower height is going to be re-measured post-earthquake. So obviously we can see we're going to be involving some different natural disasters. Probably we're leading into a unit about earthquakes. Maybe it will involve something to do with weather. We can also see on the other side, on the limitations, something that helps you with your storage, but also helps you with your content standards potentially. So the base area is not to exceed 144 square inches. Obviously, this is for an older set of kids. A younger set of kids would do something much simpler, like the one you see sort of underneath, behind that second list, but they're both tower challenges. You can also, by the way, it doesn't always have to be a competition. You can just have a set base, like build a tower that's at least 18 inches tall and incorporates at least 3 different 3-dimensional solids. There are a lot of different ways you can approach this to build in and tie in standards that you want to be teaching or reviewing after you do the challenge. And one more tip on this, you want to err on the side of being too difficult. You don't want to make a challenge too easy because it's a STEM challenge, not a STEM easy. And if they fail, if they don't succeed, that's okay. I'm going to tell you how to handle that, because really we should be using these opportunities that we have to help students build up their resilience and also learn to sort of embrace failure as just information. It's not, indicative that you are worthless and that you can't do anything and that you're dumb. We need to give them these practice opportunities, especially for those high achievers. Like I read in that book, Grit, earlier on, those fragile perfects who don't encounter real struggle or real challenge until later in life. And I am one of those. And when it happens when you're in 10th grade or in college and you really don't have any of the tools for how to recover from failure, it's really, really tough. So we want to give our students the opportunities to be challenged and to fail early and often, and then learn to recover. For me, I know that a STEM challenge has gone well and is not in Craft Tivity territory when the designs are varied. The group should be producing different looking designs if you've created a criterion constraints list that is open-ended, and if you've provided materials for them that allow them to do some different sorts of things. We're going to talk about materials in a second. I'm not going to do that right now. And so like these designs that you see here are from Ms. Cheska's class of Apples Afar, which is one of my back to school challenges. And I think it's an excellent example of how the students are creating different designs. Another thing that might be causing problems here students might be copying each other. They might be, but that's really not usually the case. It's almost always the criterion constraints list was too directive, too prescriptive, or that you've shown them a picture or an example before they started building. So the next thing you want to avoid, or to think about, I won't say avoid, but the next thing you want to think about is the materials that you use. So if you're giving them really obvious materials, then they're probably going to use them in really obvious ways. For example, if you're doing the shelter challenge and you give them one of those produce baskets that, strawberries come in, well, that's already sort of built as a structure. So most students are going to flip that over, and they're going to put maybe, a pyramid on top of it. And there you go. You've got a shelter. You're going to get a class full of exactly the same looking house. And that's not what we want, right? We want them to have to actually design and manipulate the materials. So for me, malleable is king. So I like things like cardboard, especially cardboard that's softer and easier to cut, like cereal boxes and tissue boxes. I like foil sheets. I love pipe cleaners. They're my number one. Of course, you are going to need some rigid materials from time to time. You just want to make sure that the bulk of what you're giving them is something they can manipulate. I like to add wildcard materials into my challenges too. So the example I usually give is shower caps, because I don't usually go out and buy necessarily wildcards. I just they end up being things I collect over time. And I'll throw things like shower caps once I get enough. So if I've got 6 shower caps, then I'm like, okay, I've got 6 groups to build in this next class. So I've got enough. I'm just going to throw a shower cap in. I have no idea how they're going to use it. It doesn't make any sense to me how they would use it. And yet the students figure out something to use it for. Sometimes they'll say, Miss Tracy, what is the shower cap for? And I'll just say, I don't know. What do you think it's for? Maybe it's not for anything. It's just a material. You can choose to use it or not. And it really is interesting what they come up with. So I encourage you, if there's like some weird, sometimes I get weird packing materials or those little things that go in the pizza boxes to keep the box from hitting the cheese. I collect those. Anything that's clean trash, really, I will collect and even ask my students to collect as well. So group size for me, ideal is 2 to 4. When you get past 4, you run into a problem because 5 or more, it's really hard for all of the students to really participate fully and get their hands in on the actual designs. So it makes it challenging, I know, because a lot of us have really big classes. So that might, you might have 9 or 10 groups building with a group of 4 students, which means more materials and all of that. And I know that is the case, but I would say do fewer challenges well in terms of your time, in terms of your materials. I know these are finite resources, so you have to do what you have to do, but you're going to find that it's much more productive to have them in smaller groups. I think 4 is good. 4 is pretty good for most challenges. It really depends on what you're building. And the teacher's role. So this is critical. And I've used this picture here on the bottom for a couple of reasons. So the first one is because it's scary sometimes to facilitate, because the students are going to be asking a lot of questions, and especially at the beginning before they sort of know what the deal is and they've gotten used to you not answering their questions, it's going to be tough because they'll run into frustration, they'll run into problems they're having trouble, solving on their own, and they'll look to you to guide them. And your job is not to give them any answers. You can ask a lot of questions. So tell me about your design. What have you tried so far? What problem are you having? What haven't you tried so far? You're a sounding board for their ideas. And you have to sometimes hold tight to your whys for doing STEM challenges in the first place. For me, reminding myself that productive struggle is the whole point of this keeps me from trying to be so helpful. And that's really hard because teachers are helpful by nature, right? We don't like to see people feeling bad. We want to make sure that they feel good about everything they're doing, but this doesn't prepare them for life, right? You don't have to be mean. You just have to lead them to understand that you're not going to give them the answers. One of the things that I do whenever I get into a situation where I'm feeling like, oh my God, like I just want to help them. I just want to tell them if you just tape this thing this one way, it'll work. But I'm not helping them by helping them. I'm actually hobbling them, and I need to step away. So what I'll do usually in that case, when I start to feel like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this anymore without telling them, I'll just say, oh, you know what? That is a tricky one. Keep at it. I'm going to go around, visit the other groups, and I'll be back to check in on you in a little bit. By the time you come back, 9 times out of 10, they've either solved the problem or they, just put that idea aside and gone forward with something else. So walk away, friend. That's what you need to do. Another thing you're going to be doing a lot is assisting with team dynamics. There can be some upset over whose ideas get chosen and just frustration in general. And you are going to lead the post-challenge Q&A. This is the other reason that picture I have used in the corner is here. Over time, you want to sort of disappear from this process. So you'll be asking, when the students are doing their presentations at the beginning of the year and you ask those questions of them, you'll be asking a lot at the beginning to be a model for the types of questions you want students to be asking. As you move throughout the year, you're going to be asking fewer and fewer, and the students are going to be taking over, both the groups and the peers asking the questions. So over time, you want to sort of fade into the background, like you don't even really need to be there, and the challenge would run perfectly fine. You're also going to be managing frustration, failure, and disappointment. It's helpful to know when you go into a challenge if that's important to you. And for me, it is, because I want to make sure my students are prepared for college and the future. So they need to know what to do when they bump up against frustration, failure, and disappointment. And that helps me because sometimes it can feel, when you're running a STEM challenge and you're thinking, oh, we're going to do this fun activity today, and then it turns out not to be fun. Then sometimes as the teacher, you start to feel frustrated because it didn't go according to plan. But if you go into it with the mindset that that's part of what I want to teach is when they come up against frustration, failure, and disappointment, how do you handle it? And if you are really, really giving them a true challenge, it's impossible for them not to experience these emotions at some point. If they aren't experiencing these emotions, you have not given them a challenge. So you need to up your game with that criteria and constraints list. So you model some different coping strategies. You can empathize with them, but don't solve the problem for them. And you want to, really think about in like working on your growth mindset model, right? Science, I like to say, is 99% failure, which is a dubious stat. I don't have anything to back that up other than my feeling that it's probably pretty close to accurate. If you think about things like, Edison's team taking, 10,000 tries to create the light bulb, that's a whole lot of failure. That's a whole lot of persistence and determination from that whole team of people, right? And I think most inventions and, vaccines and medical advancements, all of these things take so much trial and error. And we want to make sure that we are encouraging our students to understand that, perfection on the first try isn't the norm. It's not an expectation. So we want to be calm. We want to be confident enough to let our kids fail, but then we also need to create these opportunities for them to recover from failure. And that brings us into the epic fail. So I'm going to actually pop back on for this. Hello. So the epic fail is actually one of my favorite things to talk about because this is a common concern. If you are really setting up your challenge as a challenge, sometimes you might err on the side of like way too hard, where half or more of the groups are just absolutely not going to create a successful design. And the most important thing I can say about that is to not panic and to look at it as an opportunity, because it is. Some of my very best lessons ever have come off of an epic fail of either a challenge or sometimes like an experiment or a lab. It's all in how you handle it after the fact. For me, I'm excited about it. Like I actually try to get excited about it before a challenge starts, that I'm going to really set all these kids up for potentially an epic fail, and then we can recover from it because it's so important. So the first thing that I like to do with my students is I sort of gauge it. I look around as they're working. You can sort of start to feel that energy shift in the room, right? When things get a little, to a boiling point of frustration level, right? So if I get maybe half of the groups or more are starting to hit that level, first thing I do is usually just stop, call a timeout on the challenge, and we do a gallery walk. If you think there's an opportunity that after they've done that gallery walk, maybe they've calmed down enough that they can go back and be productive while they're working, then we go back. I should back up a moment. Even if you see all of your students are failing, or all the groups or most of the groups are failing, but they're still productively working, I don't do anything different in my STEM challenge approach. We go through the time just as we always would, and we go through all the other steps just as we always would. If they're being productive, there's no reason to stop them. All we're looking to do is learn, right? So I don't care if there's a tower standing, 18 inches at the end of this. I don't care. What I care about is that they're active and they're working and they're getting information from the things that work and the things that don't. But sometimes our frustration level peaks and it makes it impossible to continue to be productive. At that point, there's no reason to keep going, right? So after we do the gallery walk, sometimes I'll let them go back and build again. But usually if I get to the point where I'm doing a gallery walk, it means, yeah, this needs to be called. We're not getting anywhere. So we go straight from gallery walk most of the time into a class discussion. I call it sort of a post-mortem because we're going to go through sort of like what's going on. You want to be really calm as you're going through this because it's key. One of the things that I do to shift the energy is obviously modeling, sort of a curiosity about it, but also to take the steam out of it. We look at our STEM ideals, right? And I ask. So this is a poster that I like to have with all of these things that, ideally a STEM professional would embody on a daily basis all the time. I call them ideals because we know, we're human. We don't always meet and match all of those things. So the first thing I usually ask is, well, in this event, what would a scientist do? So if a scientist was working on this and it failed, how would a scientist react and what would a scientist do next? This starts to get the students out of their own head and out of their own frustration space, and they start to, hopefully, sometimes they need more guidance, especially at the beginning of the year, pick out the types of things that a scientist would do. They probably wouldn't, stomp off in a huff, hopefully. They probably wouldn't cry in the corner, hopefully, right? Hopefully what they would do is like, well, let's look at all the information. Let's try to figure out why this didn't work. Let's try to figure out what our next steps are in order to, what do we need here in order to be successful? So we walk through, there are a whole bunch of different discussion points that we have. We walk through, we create some next steps. what they need to do, and when we will revisit the challenge, because this is key. If you have an epic fail, you have to revisit this challenge. You have to come back to it at some point. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't even have to be next week. Maybe you need a month or a whole quarter before you're ready to reapproach this, but you need to make it very clear to the students that you will come back to it after you go through all those next steps that they need in order to try to be more successful. And the reason for that is you can talk a really good game about growth mindset. But if what you show them in class is, we tried a thing and it was too hard for us and now we'll never try it again, that speaks a lot louder than your words, right? So epic fails are really epic opportunities. And when you can sort of get your head around like being excited about the potential for what you can teach and learn together and walk through that will help them in their whole life forever and ever, amen, that makes it a lot easier for you to handle and to manage. So I'm going to pop back off of this screen and move back into this. So this is the last element of what I consider quality challenges. The last thing you really need to focus on is your post-challenge activities. I think a lot of people get sort of stuck at the tip of the iceberg, and they do what I call one and done challenges. So you have the students build, maybe they do the share and Q&A part or some light reflection, but a lot of times people do the build and then they just move on. And the thing is, a lot of that scientific reasoning and analysis comes out of all of the post-challenge activities that we're doing. It's crucial to have them talk and share about their designs. And one of the reasons for that is you don't even always see and know what their designs mean. At the, it can look like a pile of junk, right? And you don't understand the thought that went into it if you don't give them the opportunity to tell you about that, and to maybe even use their record and reflect pages for that. A lot of students start to gather their information from their recording and reflecting, and from seeing the other groups, from looking at, trying to identify patterns of what worked between those different groups. And then, of course, the extension lessons that apply back to these challenges, that's important, and multiple iterations. Here we go, multiple iterations. Now, I know it's very difficult for us to make time to do STEM challenges at all, but multiple iterations, I know a lot of people say, I don't have time to do them. I don't have time to do them once, let alone go back and do it twice. You don't have to do it on every single challenge, but you want to make time for it some of the time, if not most of the time. And I usually like to compare this to the writing process. It's the same thing. A one and done challenge is like a quick write. It's not bad. It has its own benefits. It's still a good thing to do. But if all you ever did was quick writes with your students, how would their writing skills develop over time if they rarely, if ever, go through the whole process, the whole writing process? If their skills develop, if they become good writers, it's almost by happenstance. It's almost an accident. And we want to make sure that we don't leave things to chance. So we want to make some time to do a second build of a design as often as we can. And there are other benefits to this as well. One is that students take more risks in their initial designs. They make things that are more creative and innovative and strange when they know they're going to have a second chance anyway. It also makes them less likely to complain when you call the time on a first iteration of a challenge, because they know they're getting that other chance. It decreases time-based task anxiety, and it helps them build a growth mindset. Because again, if we don't ever give them the opportunity to actually show their growth, then how are we really being a great example for a growth mindset with our students? All right, for most common STEM challenge mistakes, I can see I'm already 50 minutes in, so I'm already a little bit behind on my time, so I'm going to try to talk a little bit faster and get a sip of water real quick. We've already covered the first two common mistakes, either giving too much direction or making it too easy, or covering only the tip of the iceberg. I always say it's better to do fewer STEM challenges well than to do a whole lot of them only at a surface level. The next one is assessment. A lot of the time people are, I think it's almost a default approach. They default back to assessing the final product, and we really want to emphasize process over product. I don't want that third student in that picture you see feeling unsure or uncertain that her design is okay because it doesn't look like everybody else's. I want to make sure that when I'm assessing, I'm doing it thoughtfully so that it supports my goals. And I'm going to show you what some of those goals are, but basically process over product is sort of my mantra. I'm more interested in them developing scientific reasoning and analysis and working on some of those softer skills like growth mindset. If you are really wanting to assess the final design, then I would say never ever do it on the first iteration. It's just not fair. I don't know if you're a good cook or not. I'm not. So I imagine, like, what if somebody asked me to make beef Wellington and they gave me an hour to figure it out, and they set the, they didn't even give me a recipe. They just gave me the actual ingredients. And they're going to grade and judge me on the very first beef Wellington I ever make without even knowing what I'm doing, and I'm timed. That's not fair. So we shouldn't do that to our students, is how I feel about it. Instead, you want to think about what do you really want out of this? What do you want your students to develop? It might be about the 4 C's. It might be about the STEM challenge process. It might be sort of a hybrid between their attitude and the STEM challenge process. You can see the things that I've circled there in the pink boxes. Those are things that I really care about. So these are some different rubrics I might use. You can also just use the criteria and constraints list, as an effort sort of tool. They can self-assess, or you can assess them in their record and reflect pages. But make sure that you aren't emphasizing the wrong things that you don't even really mean to be doing. And finally, counterproductive mindset regarding failure. And I will pop back on for this because this is something I had trouble with, because I am a recovering fragile perfect and I want things to go well perfectly the first time always. And it's hard when things don't, right? And so sometimes we react in the negative way when it's not really a negative thing, right? When things fail, it's just information. We have to learn to start looking at it that way. Some of you are better at that. For me, that was a learning process that I had to come to through my master's program. But some of the dangers of your own mindset issues are that it leads to you choosing a fun and nice activity over a true challenge that will put your students into a place where they might get frustrated and they might fail. And it leads to your own panic and frustration, as opposed to your expectation that it's not necessarily going to go well, and that's fine. And you want to sort of model this cheerful curiosity about it. That didn't work. I wonder why not? Because that's what we want our students to do. You want to model for them what you want them to do. And we miss so many opportunities when we don't do it that way. These are two of my very favorite quotes, and they help guide me as well. Facts are not science I'm on the screen still. Sorry, you can even see that. So let me pop myself back off here if it'll let me. There we go. Facts are not science, as the dictionary is not literature. Science is a way of thinking, much more than it is a body of knowledge. So let them go through that process of learning how to think like scientists. We are not done. I still have for you resources, free and paid. I'm going to share with you links to everything I've talked about. The book too. I did notice somebody asking about the book. So the author is Angela Duckworth. And I'm going to give you links to everything I've talked about, a coupon, a certificate if you for this PD, and we're going to do Q&A. So stick with me if you can. And tell me in the comments if you have any takeaways so far as I lead us into our resources. So the first resource that I want to share with you is a course that goes a little bit deeper than we were able to go today and spreads out more of the how-to, so how to plan, facilitate, and assess rigorous STEM challenges. And what's inside this course is really, really breaking it down into more steps and more resources that help you feel very confident in what you need to do to plan. I think the facilitation is key because I give you lists of questions to ask during the build phase, during the Q&A where they are presenting, and during the class discussion as well, so that you can make sure you're asking the kinds of things that help them develop that scientific reasoning and analysis and really getting everything you can out of STEM challenges. Then we'll go through your different options so you can make sure you're assessing in a way that's really thoughtful and really helps you achieve the goals and objectives you want to with your STEM challenges. So it's not just like a fun thing you did one time. It's actually richly academic and rigorous. I'll go through how to extend. We'll go through some of the practical bits we didn't get to today as well, and troubleshooting. So some of my very favorite things are these sort of quotes, student quotes down there. They copied. I hate my group. It's impossible. I hate STEM challenges. And of course, skeptical principles, which isn't as much of a problem anymore. But back when I started, back early in the day, that was something I ran into from time to time and had to justify what I was doing in my classroom, because it's actually way more effective than a lot of the things we're being asked to do, right? You will get a certificate of 6 hours of PD. And the way that's broken down is this training will actually be in the first bit, and then there are 3 extra hours of additional video tutorials And 2 of those hours are independent work and assignments that you'll be doing to support the things you're learning. I call this course sort of a hybrid between it's a lesson study, it's a workshop, and it's straight up PD. It's kind of got a little piece of everything. You're going to get a course guide that's going to have notes and questions and work pages. You're also going to get 4 of the Tower STEM challenges in the paperless versions and in the print versions. Excuse me, I gotta drink some more water. You are also going to get all of the STEM Ideals resources, all 5 sets, all of the accompanying activities and posters, and you'll get the universal STEM challenge templates for lesson planning, criteria and constraints list, record and reflect, and those 4 assessment rubrics. And everything's editable. So what is this course worth? So I've been doing these PDs live for the last several months, and the PD itself and the guide is worth $150. That's what I charge, and that's what I get. And then when we add in all of those resources you get on top of that, that's another $52. You're also going to get a 50% off coupon for any item in the STEM Challenge shop, and that's worth up to $74. And now you might be thinking, oh my God, no, it's $276. What is she thinking? Well, I'm not thinking you're going to pay $276. That's crazy. I wanted to make something that was accessible to more teachers so that you can feel confident in what you're doing and you can do more STEM challenges with your kids, because I've seen how it's changed my kids' lives and I saw how it changed mine. So instead, we're going to do 2 payments of $26 or a one-time payment of $49.98, which is actually less than even just the resources without the PD are actually worth. And I want you to feel really confident that there's no risk here. I have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you buy the course, you get into the course, and you're like, it's not really for me, request a refund anytime in the first month, and you're good to go. Let's move on to our free resources. So first thing is, stay subscribed to these emails, because there's a freebie coming tomorrow, and I will recap all the freebies I've been giving out in June as well. If you haven't been subscribed to my email for very long, then you might have missed those earlier weeks. You can also check out my site, stemchallenge.com. Feel Good Teaching, my YouTube channel, has 52 STEM Challenge video walkthroughs, and you can get your ideas from there. If you have your own templates that you like to use for all of those extra pieces, you don't have to buy anything in order to get the ideas you need from my YouTube channel. Of course, it will save you time, but you don't have to. So that's a really good resource for some free challenges. If you're not part of the STEM Teacher Tribe yet, that's a Facebook group. I highly recommend this group. It is a fantastic place to get ideas for even classroom setup and STEM challenges, but even more than that too, because there are people in there who are teaching, robotics and coding. So there are a lot of different resources just available in that one group. It's a very active group. So definitely join that if you haven't yet. And I'm going to be doing a raffle tomorrow. And the way that you're going to enter this raffle, and I'm going to be giving away some of the resources I showed you today, some back to school challenges. I haven't picked everything up yet that I want to. There's going to be a lot of great STEM challenge resources raffled off tomorrow for free. And all you need to do in order to enter the raffle is just leave me some feedback on this webinar. Within this, you're going to find all the links that we've discussed so far. So any of the resources, including like the book, for example, is in there. Some websites, some more resources, a 1-hour PD certificate that you could fill out. I'm not sure if your school district will accept it or not. Some school districts are weird about that, so you have to check with them, but it's available to you. And then the raffle entry. And again, all you have to do is just fill out, there's like a little Google form in there. You fill it out and you're entered. That's all you got to do. And now it is time for the Q&A. I'm going to come back fully on screen, I think, for this. Let's see if it's actually, there we go. Hi, everybody. I had a couple of pre-submitted questions that I'm going to start with, and then I'm going to start scrolling through the comments and seeing what else we have in store for us. I did want to pull on, let's do this. Okay, so those are the links that I just shared with you too. I'm just going to keep those on the screen for you in case you didn't have time to write them down. The first one goes to more information about the STEM Challenge course, and that's everything you need to know about STEM challenges. And there is actually on that page, in case you want to know a little bit more, there's a video where I actually go into the course. I do like a screen share of the course so you can kind of see it a little bit more up close. Again, there's no risk, 30-day money-back guarantee. But I know some people like to just kind of like look in there and see what's going on. So I go through that in a video, give you a little bit more information if you're interested. And then the STEM Secrets bit.ly link right there is where you go in to do the raffle, and you find all the links to everything you're looking for. So I want to see, let me see my other two, or I have 3 pre-submitted questions and before I go into the others, okay? So the first one is, I teach 2nd through 5th grade Maker STEAM classes once per week for 40 minutes as a special. My question is, how long does the typical STEM challenge take? With only 40 minutes, I find it very difficult to squeeze in a complete design process challenge, yet I hate to drag a project out over more than 2 weeks. Any suggestions? Much appreciated. Thank you, Mary Dell. Mary Dell, that is tricky. 40 minutes. I'm hard pressed to think of any challenge you could really get all the way through the process. All the way through in 40 minutes with build time is pretty tough. I think realistically, you're probably going to need to break it up over 2 weeks. And I know you don't want to do that, but if we only ever do the build phase and we don't do all that stuff, that's that great, iceberg underneath the water stuff, we're missing a lot of the true value of a STEM challenge. So you don't have to do it every time. Just like I said, quick writes versus writing process. Sometimes you can do, just having the plan and build, and that might be it. And you might never revisit that challenge. Unless it's an epic fail. If it's an epic fail, in my mind, you have no choice. You must revisit that challenge at some point. But let's say it goes pretty well, everybody does fine, or most of the groups do fine, and you don't want to revisit that one, don't. But I think a couple of different options. One is, first week, you do planning and building. And if there's any time to do that presenting, and that, 2 to 3 minutes per group where they do the Q&A, I like to try to get that into the same class period as the building when possible. If it's not possible, then you do the planning and the building and you wait until the next week. When you do that, because you might have storage concerns, right? Because you're a specials elective teacher, it might be that the students don't actually get to store their designs in your class. Instead, you might need to have them take photos, and then the next week they might need to do their presenting and their record and reflect off of that. Another option, if it's possible, to work with the classroom teachers would be to ask them if you can assign the record and reflect, whatever you're using for your record and reflect handouts or pages. Ask the classroom teacher if they could maybe do that for homework in her class or as a maybe must do, but it should be a must do. You might do it for extra credit, or you might wait until the following week. There are some videos there. We talk about that more in the course. And if you check out my YouTube channel, you might also find something on some scheduling there as well. I'm going to move on to the next question. But if anybody, by the way, if anybody has any questions that go unanswered or not answered fully to your satisfaction, you can email me as well after. Just reply back to any of the emails you got about this webinar, and we can talk more as we go. So I know we've got a lot coming in. So the next question, I'm probably going to get this name mispronounced, and I'm sorry, I'm trying. So I think this is from Babatunde, and the question was, one challenge I have is where to get materials for STEM classes. So a few things. One, clean trash. Recyclables is a really great place to start. I ask my kids to bring in things like tissue boxes. Well, I have a lot of tissue boxes from just my class anyway, or cereal boxes, or basically anything that's clean trash, right? I don't want anything that has like goop on it, but as long as it's clean, I'll take it pretty much. I do sometimes have to tell them to stop bringing in materials for a while when the storage gets a little bit wonky or too difficult. Another thing I do, I buy a lot of my stuff at a dollar store. Dollar Tree is like my favorite place on earth. So that's cheap, but that doesn't always, that's not always cheap enough, right? Because teachers don't get paid what they need to be getting paid. Another thing I do is ask my parents for donations. I usually have my very first STEM challenge of the year, and I send home a parent donation request letter the same day because the kids are excited about the thing we built. And I tell them, I am shameless. I just tell my kids, hey, did you have fun building the Apples Aloft Tower today? Oh, fantastic. You know what? Would you like to do more of these things? Here, make sure your parents see this letter because we're going to need more pipe cleaners. We're going to need some things, and most of the things I ask for are things that they can get at the Dollar Tree. I also sometimes ask them for, when it's coming up around like Christmas or like teacher appreciation, where they, depending on your population, where they might be giving you gifts. I always tell my kids, that's what I want. I want pipe cleaners. Nothing's going to make me happier than pipe cleaners. Please don't give me another mug. Don't tell them, don't get you another mug. But I would way, way rather have some pipe cleaners and see what they do with them than another mug. So that's another thing you can do. Also, I recommend setting up an Amazon wish list. And it depends on your population, but in some populations, if you make it really easy for parents to just like add something to their cart, when they're going to check out on Amazon, some of them will. They'll surprise you. I didn't get a ton of takers from that because I always tended to work with populations that didn't have a lot of income, a lot of disposable income for sure. But, doesn't hurt to set it up. You never know, right? Next question. Okay, this is my last pre-submitted, and then I'll start scrolling the comments. So, question about STEM. I am a new teacher, grade still to be determined, but probably will be between K and 6th. My question is, as a new teacher, what would be a good and maybe simple way to implement STEM if the district or school doesn't already have something in place? I know that as a first-year teacher, everything is overwhelming and new. So to find some simple ways to integrate, I'd like to find some simple ways to integrate it without feeling like another thing to do and learn, and that is from Stephanie. Yes. Okay. Yes, it is very overwhelming to be a new teacher. I love that you are already thinking about STEM. That's great. So here's what I'd recommend. First of all, don't try to do it weekly when you first start out. That's going to add to your overwhelm for sure. I would recommend starting monthly or even just choosing holidays. So I always do something back to school because it's a great icebreaker, and you usually have a little bit more flexibility in taking time to set up your procedures and rules and that sort of thing. STEM challenges can be a really good way to do a lot of that practice. How do you work as a team? How do you speak to each other kindly? How do you, put the materials away? How do you work, how do you move? When do you move? All those types of things. How do I get your attention when it's loud in the classroom? So I think it's always great as a first week activity. It's also your chance to get that parent donation letter out to try to get some more materials coming in. And then, maybe give it another month before you do the next thing. Don't overwhelm yourself too much right away with multiple iterations. Or you can handle your multiple iterations instead of doing the next one whole class. You can have that, like the second build of a challenge can be something you put as a center rotation or as a may do on your may do must do chart, or for early finishers, that kind of thing. And then I would choose materials that are really cheap and easy to come by, which is what I do anyway, because I am a very frugal person. And what else was I going to say? Oh, and then with your extensions, start with something simple. Start with trying to come up with what's one, if you're self-contained, what's one English language arts thing I can connect to this? What's one science lesson I can connect back to this challenge? What's one math? Start with something simple and then build up over time. I mean, I know when I talk, and I hope I didn't just like waterboard you today. I'm trying to get it all out like as quickly as I can, and I'm excited about it. But I've also been doing it for like over a decade. So some of the ways that I approach things now aren't the way I approached them when I was a beginner. So start small and build up so that it feels manageable and so you don't stop doing it. Okay. So let me scroll through now. Oh my goodness, I got a lot of comments here. Okay. I'm scrolling as quickly as I can. I've got lots of hellos. Oh, people from all over. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate that. I know that I hope you're on break and enjoying yourself. And it's such an amazing, it's an amazing thing how teachers spend their vacation, isn't it? Trying to learn more, trying to be better for their students, trying to just improve your pedagogy is amazing. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. There's so many comments. I'm afraid I'm going to miss questions. Okay, so a lot of this is the beginning stuff. Okay. Oh, there we go. My students are very low income students. This is from Leah. My students are very low income students and ELL students. Would you still build first when they don't have much background information? Yes. I think it's even better because here's why I think it's better. Because then it gives them that background. They all have that common background once they've built once, right? That now when you're doing your follow-up lessons, they have something to attach it to. It's usually physically still in the room that you're attaching it to, and they can build upon it from there. If you're giving that, I would recommend, and this is actually a good point for Stephanie's question as well. I would recommend starting with classics. So for me, a STEM challenge classic is a tower, a boat, or a bridge. Start with those because most, if not everybody, has some experience with stacking things up, right, to make a tower. A boat, a tower, a bridge is, it's not so brand new and out there. So even your low-income students who might not have a lot of background, if you give them a criteria and constraints list, they will be able to access that and start building up. I wouldn't stay in the classic space forever because it's not as interesting, and because they're more likely to have done that. So if your kids have done any STEM challenges with any teachers in the past, it's probably been boats, towers, bridges. And there's nothing that's not bad. That's one of the reasons we want to use our criteria and constraints list and change things up. So it's not just always build the tallest tower and use, index cards or whatever. Those are not bad things, but you can make it so much better. And over time, our students sort of become bored with boats, towers, and bridges because they've done them over and over and over again. So you do want to branch out eventually, but start with those, especially for your kids who don't have as much background information. Eventually it won't matter because what you're doing is you're just presenting them with a challenge, and it's okay if they fail at that challenge. So, and I would also encourage you to try things different ways, right? So for me, I don't believe in research because when I tried research or showing them pictures or examples, it led to boring designs and it led to less engagement overall. So just try it. If what you're doing is working for you, I would still say try doing some where you don't do any research or show them pictures or examples. Try it both ways. Find an approach that works for you. Somebody else, even somebody who's an enthusiast for, 10 years and isn't necessarily, I don't know your kids the way you know your kids. So try different approaches, but I would say don't get stuck in a rut. You don't want to just keep doing the same approach because the NGSS seems to read that way to you. Okay, I'll move on. Okay, I know I've got more along the way. Okay, question about the book. Yes, Angela Duckworth, Grit is the name of that book. Use manila folders. Yes, manila folders are great too. Especially instead of just throwing things away, we find different ways to repurpose things like that in our classroom. Can they hunt and gather classroom items? Can they hunt and gather classroom? I'm assuming that this is about the materials that you use. You could try it. I would ask why. What is it about that approach that appeals to you? For me, when I hear it, I think I see the chaos of the kids running around and I see them picking up things I don't want them to pick up. I think what I would like to do for that, so there's a difference between running a STEM challenge and running a Makerspace, right? So a STEM challenge is usually, not always, but usually whole class working on it at the same time in their groups, right? Makerspace is more of a tinkering kind of area. And sometimes what I'll do is my first iteration of a STEM challenge is the whole class in their groups. Sometimes if I don't want to do the second iteration whole classes, it doesn't really fit in my world, I'll make a follow-up as an option in a Makerspace where they can pull from all kinds of different materials and they don't have to be confined to what I gave them. Because what I do when I do a STEM challenge is I give every group the same set of materials and see what they do with them. But in follow-ups, I make it a little bit more open-ended so they have the opportunity to pull in different types of materials. For me, that's a little bit more manageable. So that's what I would recommend. I want to be really clear about this, that I feel like a lot of the time when we teachers attend training that, there's somebody sitting on a lofty chair or standing at their, podium and telling you, you've got to X, Y, Z and you got to do it exactly this way. I'm giving you best practices. That doesn't mean you can't modify them a little bit and tweak them to work for your kids. And I think we lose that or we miss that a lot. We're not always treated like the professionals that we are. So you should have that same spirit of experimenting and trying something, even if it might fail, even if it might be a bad idea. You want to be a model for that. So try things out and see how it works. For me, I don't like the approach of having them run around and gather materials, but I do often give, there is usually a space where there's hey, this bucket of materials is free for anybody to just grab and use the way that they want. Not during the initial challenge, but in a follow-up, in a second iteration. Okay. Teachers are trash hoarders. Yes, we are. I've got lots of hoarders comments. We are definitely, that is the truth, right? I see some answers to that question. My favorite is are you sure about that and walk away? Interesting. I think that's probably a question, or not a question, but a comment about what to do if the student groups are struggling and, in what they're designing. Oh, bummer. Oh my God. I really like that one too. Susan says, mine is, oh, bummer. What are you going to do? That's great. I always put the questions back. When you're facilitating, that's the main thing. You just don't know anything. Just think of yourselves as like, I don't know anything. But I'm interested. I'm sure interested in what you think and what you're doing. And I'm just going to ask question after question. Eventually, it doesn't even take very long for students to understand that you're not going to be giving them the answers anytime soon, if or ever. Do I have this Think Like a Scientist board for sale somewhere? Yes, I do, Leah. This is the STEM Ideals. The one you see, this one behind me is STEM Ideals, and you saw that in the presentation. It's available in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. It's available in the course, and it's also available on stemchallenge.com. All of these links are coming to you, and they're actually all included in that bit.ly link at the bottom of the screen that says STEM Secrets. And these posters that you see over here, you see some of them. Those are the 4 C's, and that's actually, I'm just going to tell you, that's the freebie that's coming out tomorrow and there's like a little activity that goes with it as well. So stay on the list. You'll get that link tomorrow, or you can tune in live for the Facebook Live where I do the raffle as well, and I'll give all that information. Okay. I don't call it copying. I call it collaboration with peers. Yes. Maybe one group got it and wants to share their ideas. Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually something I talk about in the course as well. It's just a tricky subject, right? Because at the beginning, kids are going, until you learn to guide them through the difference between just copying for straight replication. There are a couple things that I like to approach this as. One is, like, one of the STEM ideals is build upon prior work. So we talk about that being actually a good thing because it saves humanity time, right? But that doesn't take the hurt away or the pain away when somebody takes your idea, right? That still feels really unpleasant. I don't care how old you get. I don't like it when people copy my work without giving me any credit, right? So another thing we like to do is teach kids to give each other credit for their inspiration. And also, if you're going to copy something, that it doesn't make sense to do a straight copy. You should be trying to build upon it, right? Build upon prior work, not replicate it. I try to encourage that through the rubrics that I use, that I'm looking for creativity. I'm looking for, it's okay to take an idea as your starting point that wasn't yours, but you should always give credit, and you should always be building on it to do something different with it, right? Otherwise, what's the point? Yes. Yes. Did you participate? Yeah, I think, like I said, the guy, I'm seeing some comments about, like, what do you use for your assessment piece and the rubrics and everything like that. I think that's the thing. You just want to make sure that you are using a rubric or some whatever grading method you're using that actually supports what you want the students to be getting out of the activity. So, and that's why I don't even have just one. I depends on what I want, but sometimes I'm working on the 4 C's. Sometimes I'm working on something else. Sometimes I just use the record and reflect sheet. Actually, a lot of the time, for a lot of years, I just use the record and reflect sheet because I just want to see you're making an effort. Just want to see that you're thinking. Just want to see that you're participating. Okay. STEM Ideals board and the wildcard item in the materials. I might not be getting that. So I'm just going to skip it if I don't understand it. And if I don't answer your question, like I said, by the end of this, if I don't answer your question, you can email me, okay? They play with anything? Okay. I'm just looking for question marks now. So if you didn't have a question mark on your question, I'm going to miss it. Okay. Is the course self-driven in terms of timing? I can watch videos on my time. Yes. So the STEM course, everything you need to know about STEM challenges is once you buy it, it's yours for life. So you can work through it at any pace you want. That's totally up to you. Okay. Leah Harper, how long do you see your student? Oh, okay, sorry. Now these are people going back and forth and asking each other questions. What do you use with younger students for growth mindset? For me, honestly, I have to tell you, like, STEM challenges just on their own, if you're doing them consistently, are such a help because it really gives you the opportunity to manipulate an activity so that students will be met with frustration and a challenge, right? Because we know our high achievers when when we're doing our math lessons or we're doing our ELA, whatever, the normal, activities are, it's not really challenging for some of our kids. They just fly right through it, friction free, fragile perfects, right? So for me, it's such a big deal to give them these opportunities. And so things that are tough, whether it's a STEM challenge or a lab or, anything, whatever the activity is, giving them activities that you think might be too hard for them, I think a lot of times we protect our kids. We try to like shelter them. And I think it's okay from time to time to push them, right? You need to push them so that you can give them the tools for what they do afterwards. I don't do a formal study. I think maybe some other people have answered this as well, like some of the things that they like. See, somebody's like made a comment. There's some great growth mindset things on TPT. So there are different things you can use. But for me, it's been mostly about using STEM challenges, using things like STEM ideals to talk about what should we do next, and also being really calm. And that wasn't natural for me at the beginning because I am a recovering Fragile Perfect. It was really hard for me to sort of shift my mindset into understanding that this is not like a lot of the other things we do in school, which is what makes it great. It's really about the process. It's not about having an end result that looks perfect and great and wonderful. It's about learning something throughout. So modeling and using those opportunities, actually looking forward to them, not thinking of them as a time waster, which is how I used to look at it, honestly. Like if students were like bickering and not getting along during a design, that used to really frustrate me in the early days because I was like, oh, they're like ruining it. I have all these great ideas. And we're like, I mean, I didn't say that stuff out loud. That's the stuff I'm saying in my head, right? And I would just feel like really agitated that they were wasting time until I sort of did the mindset shift of my own that like, oh, this is part of it. This is part of the value. I'm expecting them to have these disagreements and I'm almost excited when it happens. So you're modeling and giving them those experiences where they will fail and you give them the chance to recover. Because a lot of the time, here's my problem with like some of the growth mindset materials is it's like in theory versus in practice, right? So you can read all about growth mindset and think it's a great idea and, you know, have the nice quotes up and all that. And I'm not saying those things are bad. I'm just saying that on their own, they're not the practice of actually applying it. Just the same thing. It's like the STEM ideals. Like that's a similar kind of thing, but I consider it like character education for STEM classes. And it's a wonderful supplement. It goes hand in hand. It's not enough though. Like you don't want to just have, you know, oh, they're filling out this quote or saying what it means to them or looking at how it applies to this person's life or in this storybook or whatever. Those are all great, wonderful supplements. But you also need to have a regular practice of challenging your students and then giving them the chance to recover and apply their growth. Okay. Sorry, that was a big, long soapbox moment. All right, looking for more. Oh, I got an obstacle. One obstacle I face is with other teachers. One obstacle I face is with other teachers. Do you try and collaborate in any way with other teachers? When I can. Some years I've had teachers who are like we're both bought in, we've drank the Kool-Aid, so it's easy enough for like I'll do the build and all that other stuff, but can you make time to like here's an English language arts lesson that would be really great to go with, or here's a book, here's a storybook, here's a writing activity I would have them do. Can they do that in your class? If you have a collaboration with some teachers in that way, then that's fantastic. Then yes, do it. But I've also had years where I've had to go it alone. So if they're bought in, yes. If you can get them bought in, absolutely. But if it's like too much of a headache, then just go it alone. It's just easier sometimes to just say, all right, fine. After doing a build before learning, would you go back and redo exactly the same challenge after learning or a different one? That's a good question. So after doing the first, like a build of some design, then we go back and we do all these lessons that apply. Then would I go back and do the same one again? A lot of the time, yes. Sometimes I'll actually adjust. I'll ratchet up the difficulty in some way, either by making a change in the materials or, which actually, you know, changing the materials can make things easier or harder, right? But sometimes when I go back after we've applied where I think, okay, well now they should be in a little bit better position, so I'll make it a little bit harder. It's not exactly the same. It's a little bit harder. Would I do a wholly different challenge? I would say not necessarily as a regular practice because I'm trying so hard to get my students used to the idea that you're not just going to get one chance. You're going to get another chance after this. So most of the time I would say I wouldn't, but sometimes it might be appropriate. Sometimes you might have two challenges that go really, really well with the content you want to teach. So I think in that case, it's okay. What I would do in the interim between those two is I would definitely make whatever that first challenge was part of a Makerspace, part of an early finishers. So they have the option, they have some chance to go back again and still adjust their initial design idea before they get onto a totally new one. All right, what are great resources to find different STEM topics besides building towers and boats? STEM Teacher Tribe is good, but others. Please go to my YouTube channel. I have 52 challenges. I do have boats, towers, bridges, but I also have a lot of other really weird stuff. And on top of that, I'll think on it some more. But I love that question. I can't tell you how much I love it, like to the depths of my heart and soul. I love it so much because it's a natural place to start with classics, but you do want to branch out. So I think STEM Teacher Tribe is a really good place. I have a Facebook group also, Stellar STEM Teachers. It's not as big though. That's why I recommended STEM Teacher Tribe, because STEM Teacher Tribe has like I don't even know. We might be close to like 20,000 now. There's a lot of people in that group. And when you ask a question like that, you get immediate replies from all over the world, which is really cool. Now, a lot of them will be people who really like to do those classics, but that's a great question to put in that group. But I have a bunch because I really like doing things that are different. Kids aren't usually likely to have encountered. Oh, yay, compliments. Thank you. Okay, I teach French immersion. Is there any way to get non-PDF versions of the materials so I can translate them without having to completely redo? I'm not sure if this is about the course materials, about the tower challenges, or something else. In general, let me think on that. Okay, I was going to say in general, I don't tend to do that, but I am this year updating all of my resources so that if you've ever seen any of my print resources, any of my PDFs, most of the pages are editable, but not all of them have been in the past. But I am changing that this year. So I've already gone through and done the back to school challenges, all the Apple challenges, Apples Aloft, Apples Afar, Apple Annihilator, Apple Ally, and Apples Ahead. Those have all been actually updated with the new format, which would allow you, because they're in PowerPoint, but they are editable. And throughout the year, my plan is to go through and redo all of the activities, so they are all editable. But it's gonna take me the whole school year probably to do it, and I'll be taking them in sets. As you may or may not know, mine are seasonal. Most of my challenges are seasonal, so it'll kind of like I'm going to try to basically stay a month ahead of when I think you'll need to start using it. So if I didn't answer the question you want me to, then let me know and I'll see it when I scroll down at the bottom. Okay. Yay. Yay. Sorry, I just thought so. I'm sorry, I'm just saying yay and not telling you what it is. I won't tell you all of them, but one of them that I like, it says, I have a sign in my room that says, I can do hard things. I like that. That book, Grit, I actually got it the first time I got it from the library and decided it was something I needed in my life. And like, I mark it all up. I do recommend it. Grab it from the library. It's probably available for you, but you can also buy it if you, I wanted to own it. There are so many like great little quotables about it. And that really help you sort of shift into the right way of thinking about it as you approach challenges with your students. It's not about STEM challenges. It's about, exactly what it says. It's grit, the power of passion, and perseverance. It's about building those skills and that mindset in your students. Do you have modifications for special education, nonverbal students, or autism students? I've had students with autism use my STEM challenges, and it hasn't been an issue. In general, I use my criteria and constraints list and adjust the materials in a way that works for the group of students I have, because I've also had a lot of inclusion classes, but I haven't done any I'm not a special education teacher, so I haven't done any self-contained classes, although I do get feedback from teachers on my resources that they have used them with success. If we're talking about the record and reflect part of it, if we're talking about what they do after the build, because I think you can do most challenges with your special education students, you'll just adjust the criteria and constraints list for them. Just the same way as all age groups can build shelters, I think just about every ability group, you'll do better at making these adjustments probably than I would, but I would start with classics like towers, boats, and bridges, and then build up as it feels like it works for you and makes sense. But in terms of them, in those post-challenge activities, you'll look for those things that are parts of your standards that you want to connect. And then the record and reflect, I tend to, depending on where they're at, I have like a really basic simplified version that is part of that STEM Challenge templates resource that I showed you. That's just basically like 4 quadrants on the front page. And the students can use pictures or words or phrases to put their answers down, to record them. And then you have the option basically of printing the back side, which is another set where they're looking for patterns. So the first page is like an easier set where there, you draw a picture of your design, and maybe you draw in like another picture, or you write like what were the strengths, what were the good things about your designs, what were some weaknesses, what were some things you might want to improve. And then the back goes into a little bit deeper where they're actually looking for patterns of things they liked in other people's designs that they think worked well in other people's designs. So I think there's definitely a way you can approach this. In my normal resources, it's a little bit more complex what I asked them to do, but I created that really simplified approach so that, teachers who are with younger students might be able to use that, or even teachers who, use my resources. My resources are 2nd through 8th grade, and then I give you the modifications within to figure out how to adjust them and modify them for your age group. But the response pages are, for some, even 2nd grade teachers were telling me, oh, my kids don't, they're not reading and writing, they're below grade level. What would you do? So I created that other quadrant. So that's what I'd recommend is, have something where they can still reply, and even maybe that might even be a verbal interview, but give them an opportunity to tell what they got from the challenge, what they understood, and what they would change. I'm seeing a recommendation to use your PTA funding for your STEM lab and your materials. That's a great idea. And NASA for educators. Project Lead the Way has some stuff too. Now some things are starting to pop back into my mind. There was one more. I think NASA is a great place to start too. And then posters and so on for French translation. These. Yeah, actually they are editable. So in the STEM ideals, so I have all these posters, and then in the resources themselves, you have the opportunity to go in and edit what it actually says. And that was for a couple of reasons. One, that's very helpful for you as a French immersion teacher. But also I did it because for me, it was important to write them as verb phrases. So be creative as opposed to creativity. But I know some people prefer to use the noun, which is totally fine. It's a preference, right? For me, I like the idea of encouraging being active. You're actively being creative, right? So that's why I wrote them out as verb phrases, but I wanted to make it editable so you'd have that option. Okay. Woo, that was a long hour and a half. I am amazed that you all stuck with me. If there are any follow-up questions you have at all, let me know. In that STEM Secrets, that bit.ly link there, if you're watching this on the replay, which you might be, then you're already on that page, because as soon as I'm done with this, I'll go through and put this on the replay page. But at the bottom of the replay page, there is a place where you can put in more comments. So if you're watching this after the fact and you have questions, you can enter them right in there, or you can, of course, hit reply to any of the emails that I've sent you. I'd love it if you used the comment thread, because then other people can look at it and see things they might have missed. So I think we're good to go, and I appreciate all your time here today, and I hope that you found it a valuable use of your precious summertime, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon. Have a wonderful day and have a wonderful summer. Until next time.